Welcome to the Biblical Prescriptions for Life podcast, presented by Heartwise Ministries. I'm Nick Evanson. This is the podcast where we share biblical prescriptions that will lead you towards better health today, tomorrow, and for eternity. With me is Dr. James Marcum, author of the 7-week Bible study, Biblical Prescriptions for Life. Dr. Marcum, welcome, and tell us, what is an alternative therapy?
I've been practicing medicine. I'm a medical doctor for nearly 30 years. And I've learned that there's no black or white. There's lots of gray based on our genetics. And when Francis Collins and teams sequenced the genetics, it opened up a whole new world of understanding different types of therapies. If we look back over the history of the world, Hippocrates practiced different than Herophilus. He practiced different than Galen. So this has evolved, but there's some truths that have been passed down from generation to generation. We say alternative therapy because we say, oh, this is something that we don't normally do in the area that we live in.
Right. Now, the area that you live in from day to day is the hospital. You're a practicing cardiologist.
Hospital, clinical medicine, United States of America, but it's not the same in other countries.
Right.
It's not the same in other cultures.
Right.
For instance, in some parts of the world, they use a lot more acupuncture. They use more herbalists. Alternative therapies might be things like hot and cold compresses. So anyway, anything that changes our physiology, any inputs can be considered therapy, but it also could be harm. Some people use touch as therapy. Some people use placebos as therapy. If you think it's going to help, it will help. So there's many alternatives out there. Some are very valuable, some are not so valuable. So we want to present one today that I think is at the top of the list, just to explain what it is, because this series is going to amplify that type of therapy in the treatment for chronic disease. And we're going to actually talk about later on specifically which diseases it will treat.
Right. Now, a lot of times alternative therapies by some intellectual people and educated people, and maybe some physicians, maybe they think alternative therapies are kind of a hoax. There's kind of not a whole lot about these things that work, but then there will be patients, I'm sure, that have talked to you that said, no, these things actually worked for me. What is your take on that?
Well, a couple key concepts that I want to leave with everyone today. Just because something hasn't been proven doesn't mean it's not true.
That's right.
Now digest that for a second. There's lots of things that science has not proven yet. Our bodies is very complicated. And through my decades in medicine, I'm realizing how little I know, how little everyone knows. And we've evolved to treat symptoms and not so much cause. And now that we know about genetics and different changes in our bodies, we can know how complicated it is. So with that in mind, how do you know the authority on anything in medicine? Right. Where do you go?
Yeah,
it's a problem. Do you go to the internet? Well, unfortunately, a lot of people are profiteering from their alternative medicines.
Right.
Even though some of it might be good, how do you know if it's good for you? Mm-hmm. So is the doctor authority? Is the internet the authority? Is books the authority? And with this explosion of information, I frequently get my information. I can get that in seconds. I can interact with physicians from around the world, countries from around the world. We never had that before. But with this explosion of information, also makes you realize we have a dearth. We don't know much. And a lot of what we're doing might not get at the cause, but treat symptoms because it's very lucrative.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, if you think back, just 50, 60 years ago, we used to think cigarette smoking was a good idea.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
we were a little wrong on
how has that changed?
Yeah.
In the time of George Washington, we used to put leeches on people.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't an alternative therapy back then.
Right.
But it would definitely be an alternative therapy now.
Yeah.
And that one might not be so beneficial as people thought at one time. So time, circumstances, genetics change. And in developing treatment plans for yourself as well as your loved ones, you have to see the big picture, realizing there's a place for alternative therapy.
I teased in the title of this video, the alternative therapy that can save your life. Everybody on earth today, unless Jesus comes right now, everybody's probably going to die before.
Yeah.
So how is there an alternative therapy that can save our lives, Dr. Marcum? What is it, and how can it save our lives?
Well, through the years in learning about medicine, there's a place for modern medicine. We're great at treating emergencies. We're great at replacing parts. But for chronic disease and ultimate healing, we're not so good at.
Right.
Okay? So that's what led me to my authority in healthcare, which is the scriptures, the Bible, biblical prescriptions. Does that mean that there's not a place for modern medicine? No, it does not. Does that mean there's not a place for lifestyle? No, it does not. But at the core is biblical prescriptions to help change your physiology, to know when to use modern medicine, to know which alternative therapies might work for you. But more than that, we're promised in the scriptures that if you believe in me, that if you have Christ in your life, you can have everlasting life. You can have healing. It might not be now in this lifetime, but it might be beyond this. And if we could only understand, we talked about how complex medicine is, but if we could only understand how big God is, a God that can be anywhere in time at any different place, a God can heal in the twinkling of an eye. So we might realize that modern medicine might put a Band-Aid thing, but eternal healing is so much, much more than our temporary time period on earth.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of our viewers might be thinking, okay, but I want something that's going to help me right now. I want to do something that can help me right now. I'm working on the relationship with God, but what can I do right now because I'm in pain? I need some physical healing. What is a biblical prescription?
And that's what we're going to flesh out in this series. We're going to talk about, first, what is a biblical prescription? Well, we know that I frequently write prescriptions on a prescription pad.
Right.
They'll go to the pharmacy. They'll get a medicine like this. They'll take it, and it will change physiology. Usually it just changes one chemical pathway. We call that reductionism, but sometimes it's very useful. Okay? Treat symptoms, not cause. So what I've been led to do through the years is we go to the scriptures, and we actually open the scriptures and we read a text where God addresses our health. We go back to science and we see if there's evidence-based studies, remembering that not everything that's in this book has been proven yet.
We don't have a full understanding.
Right. But if we think we don't have a full understanding of a lot of things.
Right, yeah.
I look at all the medicines that have been pulled off the market. We didn't have an understanding of those.
Right.
All the treatments that we no longer use anymore throughout the time, we never use those.
Yeah.
But you have to believe in something. And I've never found a biblical prescription that is not true in treating certain type of conditions long term. So what a biblical prescription is what we're going to be doing is going back through scriptures, finding the evidence-based science that backs it up. Sometimes we won't have science, but we'll just have common sense and give it a try. And then we'll show how people can apply it to their lives and the different situations that this might be used to change your physiology, to slow down genetic aging, to treat disease conditions. Biblical prescriptions don't have side effects. But what I found out, Nick, is many of the biblical prescriptions have spiritual implications. Not only do they help our physical health, but they do something more. They touch us spiritually, and they help us to see the big picture in healing, that we can all be healed in His time and not necessarily our time, because we all have bad genetics and we all need a Savior. So we're going to be talking in this series about biblical prescriptions. What's unique about what we do is I'm one of the few that show the place for biblical prescriptions. We're accepting there's a place for modern medicine, there's a place for lifestyle, and putting it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're liking the sound of this, I want you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button right now, like the video, give us a comment, leave your questions. Dr. Marcum actually does answer people's questions. So if you have a comment there, you can learn more at our website, also at biblicalprescriptions.com. But before we wrap this up, Dr. Marcum, we got a few more minutes. I want to hear about what are some of the things that can be corrected using biblical prescriptions? What are some of the ailments or diseases that can be affected?
Well, we're going to find out that biblical prescriptions can treat almost every chronic disease condition. We've talked about how our Savior can heal us in the end, so that's the ultimate prescription. But just knowing that and having that hope can slow down genetic aging, being stress, reactions like oxidation, methylation. Science is now proving that. So any chronic disease, we're going to find biblical prescriptions can be used to treat. So it can help with weight loss, can help prevent heart attacks, lower blood pressure, help you with inflammation, treat diabetes, help you maybe with headaches, slow down genetic disease that causes us to get older than we typically would.
Right.
So what we're going to find out as we learn together, as we do the research, the science that's out there and science that is yet to be discovered, we're going to explore all these things and teach our listeners that this might not be an alternative therapy to many, but it might be the mainstream therapy that we all need to reach for first in the treatment of disease, both now and also healing for eternity.
Yeah. Dr. Marcum, where can people go if they like what they're hearing, they want to learn more, they want to get active in finding biblical prescriptions to employ their lives? Where do they go?
Yeah, you mentioned our biblicalprescriptions.com website.
That's right.
And it's a small group study where they can use biblical prescriptions one step at a time to help change their lives. And it all centers around the physiology of worship.
Yeah. Dr. Marcum, thank you for sharing with us today. I think biblical prescriptions is a fantastic alternative therapy that some people might call it that.
And stay tuned for our next Biblical Prescription podcast.
That's right. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video, leave us a comment, and visit biblicalprescriptions.com to learn more. We'll see you in the next one.